taking the time to meet. I know we don't usually meet in the summertime, but given the stuff that's been going on, I think we wanted to at least start getting the ball rolling with some of the initiatives that we want to put together for fall so that we're not sort of scrambling. Katie, I think we have 2 attendees, public attendees.
Yes, we have Chen Wang and Lin Yuan.
Okay. Do either of them want to?
For public participation, you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it looks like Dan just popped on too.
Would you like me to bring him over?
Alexis Strapp.
If anybody has, you know, we're really sort of working through the working groups, but if anybody does want to comment before we start our discussion.
Okay, so if any of the attendees, if you want to speak during public participation right now, if you could raise your hand on the Zoom function and I can bring you over to speak with the group. Otherwise, I'll assume you are just listening in. I'm going to bring Lynn over. 1 second. You can go ahead, Lynn.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for bringing me in. So am I the only one from the CFN group on the attendees list, or?
Chen Wang is also in the attending as a public participant.
All right, okay, so I can. How does this work, Tina?
So right now it's because it's an official HRC meeting. We actually have to take attendance after this. Somebody remind me, please. If you have any comments, you have a couple of minutes you saw the agenda. We're going to be putting together working groups regarding the community conversations on race in Needham, and also the other initiative that we talked about in the CFN meeting regarding policy.
Yeah.
And then also the discrimination complaint process. So we're just trying to put together working groups so that we can start thinking about how to get these initiatives rolling. But if there was any comment or any sort of information that you wanted to pass along as we were having for us to think about as we're having these discussions, now is the time to do that. And then once we put together our working groups, I know there are several community members that we've already reached out to.
Right.
You are one of them. Once we have all of that organized on our end, then we'll start
Right. Okay.
the discussion among the actual working groups. But tonight it's more about sort of organizing and trying to figure out how we move forward.
Got it. Thank you. So why don't I start by introducing myself? And I'm pretty sure I'm the first time joining the meeting. So hi, everyone. So I'm Lynn. I have 2 girls. Hi. I have 2 girls in Broadmeadow. One is going to the 5th grade. So I actually in the frontier of getting everything that was happening in the Broadmeadow. Like I got all the emails because my girls are in the 4th grade. I have a little one who's going to the kindergarten this year. So Lynn is my first name. My last name is Yuan. It's really nice meeting everyone. And I will be representing CFN. Thank you for hosting the meeting. And so anything, I'll be the point of contact from the CFN for this initiative. So thank you. So Tina, I think I sent the agenda earlier through the emails that we wanted to talk about. So first of all, align on everything that you just talked about. Really appreciate the time everybody put together in the summer. Looking forward to align on the working group about this. I think this is a serious issue for everyone, and I appreciate everybody's time. And it's personally, this is definitely one of the very important topic for me and my family too. So would love to align on the working group and understand how CFN can be part of it. The second one is trying to understand definitely the intake process, as you mentioned, how whenever there is an incident like this happen, I think one of the key confusion that we have is still again aligned on your agenda. What is the intake process? How can I help to engage and communicate with all the Asian American and Chinese community when things like this happen? Is there a clear intake process, like steps we need to follow? And my role is really trying to communicate in the middle. So looking forward to have more clarity on this topic, like what are the next steps? And then the third one, as I mentioned, I think because the incident in Broadmeadow happened in June, there will be naturally a lot of questions when we come back to school about what happened, what are the actions, how can I help to communicate the message to the community? And this is something that I'm curious about. So in total, 3 steps. That's what I was hoping to get out of this meeting too.
Great.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Lynn before we get going? Kate, I can't see hands, so.
No questions. And Lynn, I'll put you back as an attendee.
Okay, thank you so much. Could we just do a quick attendance, you guys? Sorry, I spaced. So if I call when I call your name, could you please just acknowledge that you are with us? Marlene,
Here.
Amelia,
Here.
Cynthia,
Here.
Jen,
Here.
Bud,
Here.
Carrie.
Here.
Okay, great. So really this started at we started having this conversation at our last meeting back in June, and we released the statement. We got a lot of feedback around the statement, and Jen and Carrie, please feel free to jump in since you were participating in the conversation with Dan. I think there was a lot of concern about sort of targeting NPS, which that was not our intent. We explained that to Dan that we really, the goal of making the statement and releasing it was to make sure that the Asian community, and particularly the Chinese Friends of Needham and the Chinese community, knew that we as a body of the town government were listening, and wanted to make sure that we acknowledged that they were going through a difficult time and did not want to sort of leave the end of the school year with this hanging over our heads, waiting until September to get back to it, because that is a long period of time to sort of let something like that fester and ruminate. So it was a very productive conversation from my perspective. And I think a few things came out of that. We decided that as a group, sort of loosely, that we wanted to pursue 2 initiatives. One was going to be developing, very similar to the community conversations, the cops in policing around race. And again, a community conversation, obviously, of which NPS would be a part of that, because NPS is a big part of the community. So that was sort of one initiative we want to try to develop and launch sometime this fall. And the other, which the Chinese Friends of Needham really expressed as their top priority, is to go over policy, just to see if there were areas of improvement, recommendation, that we could thoughtfully pass along to the school committee, who would then, review those recommendations and make decisions based on what they felt was best, and also obviously current state and federal regulation. So that's sort of where we are. Jen and/or Carrie, do you have anything to add?
I don't, Tina. I think that
That's a good reflection of the conversation.
Okay. Again, I think the concern with the statement that we released on the part of NPS was that probably felt blindsided, which again was not our intent. And also, NPS wants to make sure that they are not sort of the target of these initiatives. And we tried to make that clear in the statement that we released because it's about community, and that was in the actual title of the statement that Jen drafted and that we all edited. So I also met with Andrea Longo from the school committee, and I think she has similar concerns that these initiatives are going to sort of target NPS and does not feel that that would be either appropriate or sort of effective in trying to create meaningful community conversation and outreach regarding incidents of race and bias in our community. So I did want to pass along that information that I met with her, a week and a half ago. And so similar concerns. As with the cops and community conversations, the only reason why that was as successful as it was is because Chief Schultler was extremely committed to being involved with these conversations in the planning. Some of the conversations were difficult. And we definitely had some challenges that we had to work through because there were several different community organizations involved in the planning. But as with the initiatives that we're trying to put forward now, I think it is imperative that NPS is involved. So, it doesn't really make sense to move forward unless we are all working collaboratively on this effort. What that sort of looks like, I don't know, but I just felt like we were having these conversations. We're meeting with different group leaders from different organizations and groups. To wait till September to try to put this all together felt like it may just kind of fall apart on us over the summer. So at least I'm hoping to get some people committed to putting some working groups together, maybe having initial conversations in August, early September, to try to get something to the community by this fall, late fall, something like that. Jen.
So Tina, do we think in terms of what our objectives are for this conversation, is it, I feel like that the objectives of the community conversations or the cops and community was really, it wasn't necessarily to achieve any particular policy changes or advocating for anything really. The objective was to create a space for people to have some conversations loosely around policing, in the world and in Needham, in the country and in Needham. Do we feel like is that kind of the similar frame that we're working with here, even though this came from a very specific, incident and request, I guess?
I think so. I mean, didn't the cops and community conversation come out of something from town meeting? Conversations at town meeting.
From
there was an impetus
Newari.
for that. Newari. Okay, so there was
Newari.
maybe not a very specific incident or issue that occurred, but it just so
Wasn't this
happens
after the Marvin Henry?
I'm trying to remember what the timing was on
I was
that.
don't
just going to say
remember.
that. I think it was after the Marvin Henry. I agree.
Yeah, I
Marlene.
think there was this specific incident, yeah.
It
Was
was
it after Marvin
Newari.
Henry or was it after
Newari
George Floyd?
was the
Katie.
main group.
So I think it was more than one thing. And, coming out of 2020 and with George Floyd, there was a lot of requests to better understand how we police in Needham and what that looks like and how we think about equity. So there were, specific things happening in town, but it was just such a broader discussion. But one thing I would say about shaping the charge of the group, I would highly recommend, just having come out of that experience of shaping cops and communities. It took the planning committee a long time to agree what the goal of the event is. And if I were to do it again, and so since we're kind of embarking on this kind of in a similar way with the schools, my recommendation is that the working group identified from this group meet with the superintendent or whomever he designates to create the charge of what is the goal of these community events, so that we are then inviting people to participate in that process with that clarity. And, you know, because you've already started having this conversation with the superintendent, if there's something that's more a policy recommendation that should go to the school committee, you know, that small group can sort that out with the superintendent. And I think a clarity of goal early in the front end would add a lot of value. So just a recommendation, because I think it probably took us many, many months on the COPS event to sort out even why we were getting together.
Many months.
It will give us focus, and it will also communicate to the greater community what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think that's important.
And it won't be the answer for everyone. So if there are
Mhm.
other things that people still want to achieve, then they can still pursue those things through other avenues, but it's not trying to achieve 100 things through one community event.
Okay, that's great. And that is sort of what I was envisioning as well. It's really this particular conversation that we're having tonight is just to try to figure out who has resources to embark on this amazing journey. Because we
Cynthia,
have this community conversations, there is a separate group that Chinese Friends of Needham wants to work with on policy. And then there's a third group that we need to put together to really dig deep into the logistics of the discrimination complaint process. So that tonight was not meant to be sort of sorting it out and figuring out goals, but just to see, okay, who's available and who wants to do what, and let's just start the ball rolling. Cynthia.
Just wanted to say, I know that we talked about that Lynn, who's with us tonight, would be on the working group, but just as you're having a representative from the Needham Public Schools, just to put on record that it's really important to have representation from the Chinese Friends of Needham in the group, the working group that's going to come up with the charge for what the community conversation will look like. I presume that was happening, but just to
Yes, so that's why
to underline that as the other.
right.
group as
Lynn,
part of
Chen, and Natalie are all members of CFN, and they are all attendees tonight. So that, yes, they are definitely going to be involved with the process. As I think we should think about any other community groups. You know, with the community and COPS conversation, there was HRC, Nuwari, Select Board, NDI, and then we had a moderator, NRN. I mean, there were several, and obviously Chief Schluter, there were several community organizations involved in planning, right? So I want to make sure that we're mindful of others in the community that would be a good resource for us. Marlene?
I just wanted to say that I see this as community conversations, more than one, not just one, so that when people are signing up to work on this, that it's clear. I understand that the working group will make the decision, but this is a large topic that can be addressed in a myriad of ways, and I think we would be missing out if we just had one.
Yeah, that is something that Andrea Longo and I had discussed. So of like a multi-pronged approach to talking about community conversations and race. So maybe that also involves Tim McDonald from the health department to talk about mental health issues, that involves MPS, that may involve Belinda Carroll to talk about restorative justice, what things are, what's happening with the police department, how do they define hate crimes? I mean, I definitely think that interfaith clergy, right? This definitely needs to be a multi-pronged approach to having several conversations. Does anybody else have any? Okay, so what we talked about in the Chinese Friends of Needham meeting was having 2 working groups. And I just want feedback on this. It's not set in stone. One to work on the community conversations, the other to go over DEI policy in the schools and just familiarize ourselves with that policy, and sort of figure out if there are any recommendations for school committee. I think they're 2 very separate things, even though they're very intertwined. It's just a lot of stuff to put on one group. So what are thoughts on that? Please.
One thought, and I'm not sure how to work around this, but I'm not an expert in school policy and dealing with DEI concerns as they come up. Like, I don't know, are we the right body to be able to look at other schools' policies and make recommendations? I guess is my question. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but we would not be doing that without a Mary Lammy, for example. I mean, it's not something. So for example, when Andrea and I talked, sort of her scenario was, okay, so what if the working group meets initially, goes through the policy, makes a list of questions, concerns, things that may need explanation. You then bring those to Andrea and Liz, or Andrea and Mary. And then we would pull in, obviously, the school, the experts within the school that deal with DEI, to have conversations with the working group to clarify any misconceptions, misunderstandings. Maybe there are some holes that need to be filled. We're not doing this without the strong support of MPS.
So is our role essentially convening like a listening session of sorts to hear what the concerns are about the current policies?
I think that the working group needs to figure that out if we want to put together a working group on policy. But again, that is the reason why Chinese Friends of Needham reached out to us, was because that is their #1 priority, given the experiences they've had at the school, over the past few months. So I just wanted to put that out there because that was a call to HRC specifically. Cynthia.
Is there any thought about having representatives from public schools from the beginning, so that the Human Rights Committee is part of the process, and there's kind of like the people saying, well, why doesn't this happen, or what does this mean? And the people in the school people can respond right then and there, rather than making a list of questions and then later on getting a response. So that in a way, we're an interested party helping people to listen to what's going on. And then the next part is what possibilities there are for changes. Again, coming out of having worked in schools, as we know, there are a lot of things at state and federal level that people can't change. But I think to go step by step with the people there from the school department being able to respond, although I can see how it could be helpful just to have a listening session before doing that. But I'm just bringing that up as another approach to consider.
Okay, I don't disagree with that. Jen?
So how do we reconcile the fact that our discrimination complaint process specifically, I think, takes complaints about the schools and takes it out of our jurisdiction, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word.
Mhm.
Like, is, I don't know, will we get some different feedback if we try to tackle that?
Katie,
Tina, Marlene, please chime in, but you know, in the discrimination complaint process, if anything is about an employee or a student, you know, that has to go to the schools. But if it's a policy or a program that HRC wants to make a recommendation about, you can, you know, and I think the thought was that this would all be done in partnership with the schools, because Jen, to your point, none of us on this call are experts in schools. That's why we have a school committee and administrative staff to do that work. So I think, you know, I guess the intent wasn't that you can't ever have an opinion about a school policy. I just think it would take clear discussions, Tina, to what you've raised with the superintendent and the school committee about what is in their jurisdiction, what's in HRC. So I think it is, and this is just my opinion, you know, jumping into this conversation, but the HRC could provide valuable research or comparisons to other communities on policy that the school committee is considering. I would want to hear from the school committee on HRC's role in engaging the community in doing listening around a school committee policy, right? If this is an issue that they want to take up, I would imagine they run their own public hearings, et cetera. So that is the point of kind of gray area for me, where it would be worth a follow-up conversation to get really clarity on that. But like with the select board, if this group HRC has opinions about a town policy, you know, that is what the board wants to hear, is this group's thoughts on that, but not run a public engagement process kind of outside of the body with jurisdiction.
Jen, does that help answer?
I understand what Katie's saying. I understand the words. I'm still not sure where that really leaves us for next steps. I got to think through that a little bit, I guess.
I also think it's a case by case basis, right? I mean, people handle things differently. You know, as I explained on our call, my children have had experiences in the schools being Asian, young Asian women. Out of respect for them, we decided not to call it out to the school. That was the decision that they made. We handled it internally within our family, and that's what they wanted. So, you know, people, I think it really depends on how people handle things. You know, how a lot of people don't necessarily know us, HRC, at all, right? We still have a lot of work to do as far as marketing ourselves and develop any sort of strong a footing within the community. People wouldn't even know necessarily to come to us for something like that. There might be people that, you know, I feel more comfortable with HRC because I know Amelia, and, you know, I don't know anybody I know my kid's teacher, but we don't really have that kind of relationship. I'm going to go to Amelia first. So I think it really sort of just depends on what that situation looks like.
I think we need to have a process though. So, you know, people, you know, for example, with this situation that we're talking about right now, know that there's somewhere that they can go, and we just need to figure what the process would be once people would come to us. And
Hence the working group.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
I'm happy to be on the working group.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I think we'll have to sort all of that stuff out. And it wouldn't even, you know, it's not necessarily just NPS. It would have, as Katie said, you know, what if it's something that has to do with something that happened in town hall, right? An employee of the town, or a police officer, or, you know, and how comfortable do people, where are people going to go? Where is their comfort level? Where is it going to take them if it's something that they want to, an issue they want to raise?
Or even
Um,
on the athletic fields with the sports teams, the town teams, and not only the high school, but also the teams that represent the town.
Yeah. Okay, so are there any other questions or feedback on sort of how to move forward, and just in general, do you guys feel like we need these working groups and want to put them together?
Definitely.
Yes,
Do you need a motion
Um,
or not? I don't know if we need one.
Katie, do we?
No, I'd just get names for volunteers for each item.
Okay, so are you guys willing to establish these now? And I'm asking that you involve yourself with at least one of the groups. If you can handle two, that's great, but at least one, just so that we have the resources.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be on the complaint discrimination and also on the community conversations.
Thank you.
And I would like to be on the conversation committee.
Great. Cynthia?
Conversation, go ahead, Cynthia.
I'm wondering about the timing of when they're meeting, because I'm going to be away a lot in August, and that's, although if we're meeting by Zoom, that helps too.
Katie, we can still meet by Zoom, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Conversation committee, community conversations committee.
Okay. Jen?
I was gonna say the conversations committee. I'm still pretty unsure what we can really do on the complaint piece of it. So I'm not super psyched about doing that, but I understand that you now have everybody doing the conversation committee. So I will give it a try.
Do you want to
Um,
do the policy one? There's a policy one.
I honestly, Tina, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just tired after a long day. I'm afraid of us taking on something that we're not going to be able to do. And maybe this working group is just in that preliminary stage, but in trying to think about what it is that we can do. It's
Mhm.
just really important to me that we can be clearly stating kind of what our role is, what our goals are in trying to have the conversation. And I don't want to, I think that your points about kind of where people come into the conversation and finding a comfortable place, and HRC being that place, is something that I think is amazing and you know, has been motivating me for 10 years on this committee. And I also am very cognizant of, I don't know, how we can be helpful and not make things worse, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. I think for the policies, I mean, it's very clear, you know, the procedure is you make a recommendation to school committee kicks it to the policy subgroup makes a decision on it. Policy subgroup brings it back to the entire school committee. If they feel like it's something worth voting on, they vote on it. So it's not generating policy in my mind. There's so much one of the things that came out of not only the CFN meeting, but also that I heard at the Broadmeadow meeting, there is so much information everywhere. Nobody knows where to find it.
Mhm.
Some people don't even know that there is a DEI policy that exists. you know, people are looking for consequences for actions. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Is that even possible? A lot of people don't understand that there are state and federal
Mhm.
legal guidelines that need to be followed. Also, keep in mind that we're dealing with children. So I think it's really trying to sort of sort out the information that's already there, figure out how we can make it more accessible to people. I mean, in the last meeting, for example, Finn and Emmy, remember they had mentioned that they went onto the website. I don't know if it was the high school website or the MPS website in general,
Yeah.
and they found something about DEI policy, and it was, you know, launching in like 2020 or 2019. So updating things. I mean, I don't necessarily think that we're trying to reinvent the wheel. But I do think that I don't think there's any harm in just reviewing and seeing where the information is and trying to figure out how do we get this information out to people who really need it. I mean, it was clear to me in that meeting that even though the information is out there, even though there's a website on Real Coalition, even though there are web links to articles and YouTube videos and speaker series, people still don't really know what we're doing in Needham and how it's, you know, how we're handling DEI, not just when things happen, but also from a curriculum standpoint. So that's sort of what I think that policy group is going to look like. I don't think we're trying to tear down MPS policy and rebuild it. I mean, it's
No,
not going
but
to happen,
even-
first of all,
even
but
to-
to try to like to try to help CFN figure out what's the landscape and how to, you know, to help CFN and those who were affected recently by what happened at Broadmeadow to sort of move forward. I mean, I think part of the problem out of the Broadmeadow meeting was that, you know, a lot of people were looking for sort of, well, how was the child or how was this group of children punished, right? What was the consequence? And I just don't think that there was closure for a lot of folks.
I hear that. And I'm not, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that NHRC is in the position to give any closure in that space. And so even to thinking about Katie's point, which I hadn't really even thought about when I said listening session, that it would be the school committee and not the town hosting something like that. So is the I don't know. Like I hear what you're saying about collecting the information and figuring out where it is. To me, like that, the idea of trying to help the, you know, the Real Coalition Community Engagement Committee figure out how to engage the community differently, or not that we'd be teaching them something new, but talking about trying to do things in different ways. I get that piece for us. I am not sure where we fit in to the policy conversation. And I'm trying to think back to the days before the equity audit.
Mm-hmm.
Try to remember what our role was then. And my recollection was that it was convening a meeting with Dr. G and kind of raising the concerns, helping the families that were bringing it to us have a space to raise the concerns with him in a different kind of forum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but we weren't necessarily making recommendations to NPS about XYZ. I don't know. I'm sorry if it seems like I'm complicating it. There's such important interests at stake.
Yeah.
I just don't want us to be promising to do something that we really don't have the power to do, because I don't think that would lead anybody feeling very good.
And we don't want to add to the frustration.
Right.
And also, you know, it's very difficult for me to understand, you know, I'm not in their shoes. I don't understand. I mean, I can understand, I can be empathetic, but to really understand how it truly is affecting these people and their families is really important. And how do we help them, you know, through this process?
Cynthia.
Jen, as often, I think you really are right on target about raising the things we need to think about. And it was really helpful to think back to the time when the families were involved with trying to, they had already brought their concerns, but they didn't feel that they were being responded to in the way they had hoped. And so I think our role was not to come up with new things. Our role was sort of like, I don't know what the name of, it's not friend of the court or something, but kind of walking with people so that we're, as Human Rights Committee, we're saying, we know the school system cares and we know the community cares, but we're going to walk with the people as they're bringing this to see. And in a way, it's amplifying a voice, or sometimes our role with the select board might be to say, please pay attention to this more. Not that you don't care about it, but it's some kind of role like that feels like it could be useful, because we're friend to the process. We're not advocating for them. We're not coming up against the school system. We're kind of wanting to see the process happen. And I don't know if I've heard you correctly, but that was sort of what I think we might be able to do. Because otherwise they could just sit with the school people and they can go over the policies and say, well, it's written here, it's written there. So what will be different to have us there? That's what I'm trying to think of. And probably I would volunteer for it if I can understand it.
Amelia.
I'm wondering if we want to, I know we're taking the initiative and leadership role, but I wonder if we want to engage Needham Diversity Initiative as well, as people who are on the same mission. I think of what, well, first of all, Raman was on Nuwari, so he has the background experience. He's has an excellent voice, and can bring people together in conversation. I think another aspect is that the Diversity Summit is an opportunity to provide a forum to discuss. I think of the workshop that Jen, that you and Carrie and Tina did, and together with Dr. G. That was a wonderful opportunity for the community, if those who came to the Diversity Summit, to hear about a very controversial topic from many different perspectives. So I'm wondering if we might also think about engaging members of NDI. And remember, the Chinese Friends of Needham did reach out to Needham Diversity Initiative.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
I didn't think any of these working groups were just us alone. I thought we were going to be engaging others, except for maybe the complaint discrimination process. But for the community conversations and looking more at the policies, I didn't think it was just going to be an HRC thing. I thought we were going to broaden it immensely. I mean, we're just a few people.
Carrie. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just switched from my phone. Sorry, I'm now in front of my computer. I didn't mean to speak.
How's your rotator cuff?
I'm out of the sling. Yay. I'm on the other side. Thank you.
Katie,
Just a suggestion from what I'm hearing in the discussion, I wonder if that second working group, the policy one, waits to populate it until we can get a clearer sense of what the school committee's thinking about their next steps in the fall, or August. But I would encourage, if the group feels ready to volunteer, to populate the discrimination complaint process working group a little bit more.
okay, well, pop me on the policy and the complaint process.
But I got the feeling from Lynn when she spoke that that was very important. So that CFN is very, really wants to move forward with that. So
Mhm.
I want to respect that also.
That, yeah, I mean, that is more of a priority for them than the community conversations.
Yeah.
And what does Dan Gudikants think about the policy committee or working group?
I mean, we certainly can follow up with him. He was, I wasn't in the last discussion with the superintendent. I'm sorry. So if
He's raising his hand. Can we ask him?
Right.
just cognizant of, I will move him over.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Just a little bit easier to do instead of reading his mind. Let's ask him.
I think Dennis also had his hand up. Looks like.
How can you guys see that?
Oops.
Marlene, you click on participants and then that screen will open up on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I see it, but it doesn't, it only shows me, doesn't show me who's in the waiting room, so.
If you click on attendees, it will.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Hi, Tina and folks. I will be very quick. I'm kind of doing double duty here with a couple of meetings at the same time. So just briefly, I appreciate the conversation and certainly the focus on conversations around race. I think something I need to share that I shared with Tina and Jen and Carrie recently is that it is appropriately entitled, in my view, Community Conversations on Race, because I think often people think that if we can only fix the schools, then racism will go away in the community. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It is a family, personal, certainly schools are involved, community and national issue. And so I applaud the effort to pull together some community conversations on race. I want the schools, as I told Tina, to be involved in that. And maybe it can be a series of conversations. Maybe the Needham Resilience Network is involved in that somehow, and NDI and other groups that can take place over the course of the fall and the winter. Regarding policy, I want to be very clear about that. Any group, any family, any individual can provide feedback on policy to the school committee when they discuss policy, which is typically involving the handbooks, which typically happens in the spring. Groups do not develop policy for the school committee. The school committee is responsible for implementing policy, developing and implementing policy, including what's in handbooks. They discuss that publicly. They provide an opportunity for the public to weigh in on policy, and then they decide whether or not the policy will be adopted after a public process. But it is not up to any one group to suggest what policy will be, although they can certainly provide feedback. And honestly, I wouldn't want any one group to have purview over suggesting what the policy should or should not be, because it's not the purview of any one group. And most policies in the Needham Public Schools are dictated by very strict state and federal laws that do not pertain necessarily to town entities, but they do to students, for example, and student rights to privacy. a lot of what families express they want to know will simply not happen. People want to know what the punishment is. That will not happen. That cannot, and I wouldn't want to set up an expectation that any group will that will be an outcome, because that will not be an outcome. I will say that in the recent June email that the Chinese Friends of Needham put together and sent out and included the school committee, they included some information from the Newton Public Schools about what is in their policy regarding how the steps they take. And I informed Dennis Yang, that I thought that was very thoughtfully written policy that I would hope and I would expect that I can ask the school committee to adopt in this coming year for our student handbooks. It lays out, Newton and Needham do the same thing, do the exact same thing, but they explain it more clearly in their handbooks than the Needham Public Schools. And I'm always looking for an opportunity to improve what we're doing. And that is at least one area that I think we can improve. We can provide more clarity for families about what happens if, without sharing the individual consequence. So all that is to say that the school committee is always interested in feedback on policy. They will be taking up the handbooks in the spring. We'll be working on them in the fall, and any good ideas will absolutely be considered. We'd be foolish not to. And if it certainly helps families and it ultimately helps students, then we're going to be right behind it and make it happen.
So Dan, do I understand that you're saying we cannot know the specific consequences and what actions were taken, but that the school committee, that the Needham Public Schools has a policy that there are consequences for people's actions? Is that correct?
Yes, that's currently the case.
Yeah, because I think it's important from an educational standpoint that students need to know there are consequences if they do things.
Right. And we can always try to, I think Tina said this earlier, at least she said it to me earlier in a conversation, that trying to get people to pay attention, to get information to them so they know where to look is really an ongoing challenge. And I'd like us to do a better job of making sure people have access to good information so they understand what's happening, and that they have an opportunity to weigh in and suggest new ways that may help us. And all of these things, particularly when it comes to students, are very much constrained by certain guidelines that we must follow. And families don't appreciate that necessarily. Community members don't understand that. They get frustrated by that. I'm frustrated by it myself sometimes, but it is what we try to do. In any event, I'll just close by saying that the school committee, the Needham administration, absolutely will be and wants to be engaged in community conversations about race, because it is about our community, and the schools are a big part of that, and should help with that. And as far as policy is concerned, the school committee is always interested in feedback. I think they have a policy subcommittee that meets, and those are all open meetings and people are welcome to attend them. And when we discuss the handbooks, and the handbooks are the areas where we specifically detail what happens when and how it happens and who's involved. Those conversations will unfold over the winter and into the spring as we continue to work on those topics. Sorry to interrupt your meeting.
That was great. Thank you. So does that provide a little more context and clarity?
I will just speak for myself. It provides me some clarity. It doesn't provide me necessarily ideas about what are the tangible things that we want this group to do. I suppose if you're saying you want to just convene some people to think about that, given the parameters that we have, is that where we are? I hate to set the expectation that we can do something that we're not going to be able to do, because I think that wastes everybody's time, especially the families who are trying so hard to get get their needs met and their voices heard about it. I guess I hear, from what I hear, CFN is really interested in this policy piece. We really want to support them. So okay, let's put together this working group to work on the policy. But if we really can't do anything, then I don't want to make a false promise or set a false expectation, is what I'm saying. And I would love to hear what the rest of you guys think, because maybe I'm just tired and cranky.
Frustrated is a better word than tired and cranky.
Marlene has her hand up.
Oh, Marlene.
Marlene, you're muted.
Marlene, you're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. I'm having some unstable internet. I had to go out and come back in, sorry. So to me, it's not, we want to see what's going to happen, Jen, that's the way.
Marlene, can you try to shut your video off? And maybe
To bring people together. And I don't think
Marlene, I'm sorry, we're not hearing you.
I think how if policy may be fine, but they may just not be
Marlene, we can't hear you.
People. So that
Why don't you mute her?
maybe, and how this is. Can you?
I just tried, but
Oh.
And now she froze. Tina, Dennis does have his hand up. We're beyond public participation, but if the committee wants to.
Yeah, let's, yep.
Okay. Dennis, I'm going to move you over.
Hey.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm driving right now. So, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this meeting, and appreciate that. I think I understand this is a general public meeting, try to working out the setting up the working groups for the policy review and also community engagement. So my question is do we have the roster set yet, or is we just got kind of green light to move forward to setting up the working group? And also second is I heard Dan talking about the policy is a general, but we cannot define with any actionable actions. Can you elaborate what that exactly means? Is there's nothing we can do here, or what? And if we cannot do anything here, specifically, it's what kind of a state regulation kind of establish this type of policy regarding we can't enhance the policy with any actionable items. So this is my two questions.
Thank you, Dennis. So we're in the process of putting the rosters together now, the volunteers for each group. And it's not that we can't So the process is, you know, the school committee will take feedback on policy. And then that goes to the policy subgroup that discusses all policy recommendations, not only from concerned citizens, but, you know, state, federal regulatory bodies. If it's something that they feel like they want to move forward with, then they bring it to the school committee after lengthy discussion for a vote. So I think the concern is from Jen is that we want to make sure that we're setting expectations, but we have to work obviously within the legal parameters of what's happening. So, you know, definitely going through the policy, making sure that there's a better understanding of what it is, trying to figure out where information can be found. Are things clear? You know, I think that's sort of something that's attainable. And I think that's what I heard at the Broadmeadow meeting is a lot of people cannot figure out where to even access this information. But with regard to very specific policy, you know, that's something that has to go through school committee. That's not something that any of us, you know, even though HRC is a town member of the town, a group of the town hall, I can't speak. That's not something that we can enact, right? It has to, everything goes through school committee.
Oh yeah, of course. I think I appreciate the chance like to be able to work with the town and representatives from school, even public schools like Mary Lemmy, if possible, is like to kind of work on something which is tangible and can be useful going forward to prevent like a bully or cyberbully within the public schools. So things like that. So definitely I understand there's a process of going through the public hearings, discussions. Sorry about that. So basically I understand there's a public hearing process we need to go through the discussion in order to get this approved so that we actually run the pilot of the program to see if this is okay or not.
That's right. I mean, yeah, it goes through school committee. And, you know, I think one of the things that may come out of the working group is once we go through the handbooks and the policy, we may find that the information is actually there and, you know, a policy does exist. It's just not maybe being clearly set forth or, you know, the language needs to be written a little bit more clearly. So
Got it,
yeah.
got it. Yeah, I totally agree. So I am, so I think, sorry about that. So, yeah, I totally agree. I think if we can pin down the working group, kind of the rosters, that's going to help us to move forward with the first step is to start the process. I understand it's like the final draft of that policy enhancement might not be the version of rolling out for execution. I totally understand. There's a lot of you know, parts, concerns, like we have to kind of jump the hoops.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's like I think the first step.
Okay, great. And as long as you know, I think expectations are set from the get-go. So everybody has an understanding of what that procedure is going to look like and what can or cannot happen as we move forward with it. Thanks, Dennis. Okay, so
Thank you.
I don't know. Do we feel like do we have at least one or two people for each working group?
Is Marlene back that she can share what she was trying
Oh,
before?
And yeah, try turning the video off so that you won't lose the audio.
Marlene?
I seem to have really unstable internet. Can you guys hear me?
No,
No,
Every frozen. Sorry.
Can I ask a logistical question? What are the open meeting rules and processes around these working group meetings? Is that something that we need to be concerned about, or can we just convene, people to talk?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that.
good question.
Cynthia.
Tina, it was extraordinarily helpful to hear Dan and then to hear Dennis, who I think heard Dan, that it would be, it sounds like that it would be meaningful and acceptable to the Chinese Friends of Needham to go through the process of looking at what already exists. And if there's something that people feel they want to propose, they understand that that group won't be deciding it, that it will go through the process of going to the school committee and public hearings. I mean, that made me feel like, okay, I can see that happening.
Okay.
Does it seem
How about
like
Jen? How
something
you
that we can agree that the ultimate, well, I guess what this working group would be doing would be trying to get a handle on what already exists, how it's being disseminated, how the information is being disseminated, and are there different ways that we can tackle it so that more people have the information? And then as a third piece, if we are looking at if there are policies that people have heard about in other districts, that perhaps we as a group come together with some ideas that we think we would like to bring to the school committee in the spring, or maybe start, what do they call it? The policy subcommittee, trying to connect with them earlier on in the winter.
I feel like that's reasonable. Dan, did you have your hand
Yeah,
up? Sorry.
No, if I may, and I'm interjecting, and thank you for letting me even do that, because you don't have to. Tell me to shut up anytime you want. If it is helpful, and I'm thinking broadly, not just for, CFN, but for our Metco parents, for NDI, for any group in town. If it would be helpful in September, at your September meeting, or your October meeting, one or the other, I could invite Mary Lammy, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Sports Services, myself, maybe somebody from the policy subcommittee and the school committee. They're reorganizing their subcommittees this summer to attend an NHRC meeting with the purpose of explaining how policies developed as it pertains to students, and how handbooks tie into that policy. Perhaps that, and then that can be broadly disseminated. This is the discussion that's going to happen at the Needham Human Rights Committee. We could do a presentation and have a broad Q&A about, how the school committee develops policy, what are the considerations we need to pay attention to in developing policy, how the public can influence that policy, how we communicate that policy, or how we could better communicate that policy. I mean, it could be a broader discussion that may touch upon different things that the Human Rights Committee has been interested in and discussed actually in the past. It'd be great too, because our student reps would be there to listen in and chime in. And as I'm listening to this conversation, I'm thinking if we could at least provide, this is what we do, that may help different individuals or different groups understand, okay, then that's how you work through that system. Because right now it sounds as if different people have different opinions, not necessarily on this call, but different groups about what they want and or don't want to do. And there is a process to follow, and there are some guardrails that we So Tina, I leave that to you, but we'd be happy to do that. And that perhaps may help frame a further conversation or jumpstart a further conversation on getting folks more involved. So I'll defer to you, and we certainly can talk about that offline, but certainly like to help out if that would be of use to the group.
Okay, thank you. And yes, there's no discussion needed. I'll talk to you about organizing that. And I think that'll also help with sort of setting expectations. It'll help with this subcommittee, this working group, to guide actions, figure out what we're all capable of and not able to do. So as Dan was saying, having that framework, I think, will be very, very useful. So I will, I'm going to organize that with him.
And Dan, your student reps are amazing.
Yeah.
They really are fabulous.
Marlene has now joined from her phone. I don't know if we can better hear her, but I don't know if we want to try one more time.
Yeah. Let's try. Marlene.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Really? Okay. I don't even know what I was saying. It seems like it was so long ago and I missed so much, but I guess what I was trying to do was to understand sort of this, the policies group that CFN, was interested in, and you may have already said all of this, but to me, a lot of it maybe is more about looking at the policy and how it is articulated to the community and to the schools. And I think that some of us could have a role in doing that and be very effective in helping with that.
Okay. Yes, that's great.
Sorry.
No, you're spot on. Okay, so Katie, do we have folks for right as of now sort of populated in each group?
I can read what I think it is. Community conversations, we had Marlene, Amelia, Bud. Policy, we had Tina. And I'm not clear if there was anyone else.
Cynthia's raising her hand.
Yeah, I said,
Thank you.
Oh, Cynthia
Thank you.
and Jen, we've convinced you.
and Tina.
Yes. So policy is Tina, Jen, Cynthia. And then discrimination complaint process is Marlene and Tina.
Okay. All right. And I'll touch base with Nate and Emmy and Finn to get those guys involved as well. Okay. Great. Are there any additional comments or questions about moving forward with these groups?
I think it would be really helpful for us to find out what rules we have to abide by in terms of inviting people, if they have to be noticed meetings and public.
What for the community, the cops and community, were those open meeting? Was it?
They weren't, it wasn't a subcommittee of a public body. It was a group basically that I convened. So that's the distinction I just need to talk to council about.
Because it was,
Okay, because there
it
were a
was
couple of
independent of
HRC
us.
Right, it wasn't a subcommittee of a public body, so,
Okay, I see.
so I just need to get some clarity, and
Right.
I don't want to answer you on the fly.
Yeah, if there's some way it could be done, it's going to be really, really time consuming and all to try to do it as open under the open meeting law.
Yep, understood.
Have it under Needham Resilience Network or something like that. Hmm.
Okay.
And
Okay,
we
so
know
we'll,
that there are other people. These are just the Human Rights Committee people.
right, and Chinese Friends of Needham, they've already, I've already heard from folks who are going to be involved, so from CFN.
Great.
Is there any advantage to having somebody, like to having CFN be the conveners of this meeting and just sending HRC members to it?
Hmm.
Katie?
Interesting point, Jen.
Well, I just also wonder that that allows them to have more, I don't know, say over the direction of it, more, I don't know.
So I guess it's similar to when I was talking about what is the charge, what is the purpose, what is the goal of this event. If this group is not hosting the event, hosting the working group, putting this together, then it's not an HRC event and it's not a town event. So I think you either have control over something and you can shape and frame it and invite others to participate, or this is not something that is a town-led event. It's community-based. So it's just a choice. It's two totally different things. So I am hearing strongly that HRC wants to play a role in connecting between the institutions and the community. So I think it should be an HRC owned and led thing.
I do agree with you.
So
Does anybody else have any strong opinions about it either way?
I think it makes sense.
I think that makes sense, but we can still, with a policy thing, say that we are starting, this is inspired by the terrible events that happened, and we want to start with hearing from the CFN, and that's going to be a central part of, we're responding to that and we're holding it, but that's a central part, is hearing from them and their concerns, without saying that they are the ones in charge in setting it up.
Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, and then I'll probably reach out to folks individually to get feedback on other potential collaborators who you think, because I'm not involved with all of these different groups. So if you feel like, or if you want to just email me directly, if you feel like there are folks that make sense to invite to any of the working groups, just let me know.
Do you have a sense of how many people you want on each working group?
How many did we have on Cops and Community? Did we feel like that was a good number? Was it too many?
I can pull up our notes from the planning committee and make some suggestions.
Yeah.
Because amazingly, it's been a year. So
That's not okay, Katie.
I just need to revisit and bring
Nope.
it back into
No.
my brain.
That is not okay.
Well, around 7 or 8 is an ideal number to feel like a small group. When you get too much larger than that, it's harder to have the close, just as a social dynamic.
Okay. So let's shoot for that ish. Okay, great. So I will follow up with you guys on assignments and volunteer the groups that you want to, that we're joining, and then just we'll once we hear back from Katie, we can figure out timing. And in the meantime, if there are folks that you think would be a good fit for any of the groups, just let me know. Does that sound good? Am I missing anything? Okay, Marlene, do you, we're way over, but do you still
way
want
over
to talk
time.
about the,
Yeah,
briefly, since it's happening and we're not going to meet again until after August 5th?
right. So you all received the letter. Tina forwarded the letter that came from Anna about the what was going on August 5th across the country in libraries. And so I met with a group of other concerned people. It was chaired by Rebecca Young from NDI and also from LGBTQIA in Needham. And there were, a lot of people who were concerned. I'm not going to go over all the details. You can read it. And then I sent you a follow-up letter of what happened. So one of the things that was proposed, well, I'm not even going to tell you what was proposed. So what's going to be happening, this group has not contacted the library to meet in Needham on August 5th. But the group has decided that they, the anti-LGBTQ group, that's being led really by people from a religious perspective that is very narrow. So since they aren't meeting and this Needham group wanted to get together and just have books there for families and kids, but the library already has one program and they don't really like to have more than one program at a time meet in the library. So right now, we don't know for sure. We're still waiting for an update from the library. So the latest email I got from Rebecca Young that they were discussing different options. They cannot reserve a room at the library, but people might be able to meet there and take out books and hold an informal reading or discussion in the library. This is on the 5th, probably at 2:00. But we don't want to disturb patrons at the library by taking in any open spaces. So the idea now is that if the library will allow us to create an informal table in the lobby that we will arrange ourselves, so we're not involving library personnel, and people can walk in and see whoever is there. A few people have volunteered to be there who aren't on vacation on the 5th, and either talk or take books out. So they're asking if the library, if this would be permissible and if in fact we can do this. But what I'm really want to bring to the NHRC is that a lot of things are happening in this country around these issues. And we have been very involved in the different book groups around diversity. And I think it's going to continue even in stronger ways. And I just hope that we will be able to support these activities. And I was there as a representative of NHRC. So I don't know that I don't want to take other people's time because I think the conversation will continue. And if I know anything more, I can email you. So if people want to go and support this effort on the 5th as it evolves, I will let you know. I actually will not be there because I will not be in town.
Is there anything aside from attending on the 5th, things that we need to be thinking about going forward?
Not yet.
Especially as the school year begins.
Yeah,
and given
I don't.
the one book at the high school this year is Heartstoppers, which is about a gay relationship. So it's sort of fitting.
Yeah, so that's,
but if there's
that's
anything
great.
that could be something that is displayed at the library if they have the book. It's called Heartstoppers. It's actually a series of 4 graphic novels. But anything else, if that we should be thinking about in the meantime, that came out of that meeting?
Yeah, well, I think EJN for Families is very involved in this, and they have had story times. And what was most interesting to me was there is a gay man who joined this group just because he heard about it, and very much, he's a father in town, and he very much, wanted to be part of this. So, so that was heartening to me to see a new face because I knew everybody else at the meeting. But I think that, you know, we're going to be called upon because things are ramping up in this country, and it's we just need to be aware and allow everyone to have a voice, and nobody to shove anything down anyone's throat and not allow them to read certain books or talk about certain topics.
Okay, thanks. Katie, did you
Yeah.
have, was there anything that you wanted to mention on that?
Nope.
Okay,
If at any point in the future, the library, they have policies around book selection and room reservation policies. So if at any point in the future, we want to add it as an agenda item to kind of similar to what the superintendent's doing with the schools, like provide a framework for how the library is prepared for these things, we can talk about that, but
okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments for Marlene?
Do we know what the library would like or not like from community groups?
No, I mean, some people have been in conversation with Kim Hewitt, who's the director. But I think they're going to be, you know, continuing conversations. But anybody can reserve a room, and there's a freedom of speech. So we were just going to try to, you know, counter this to say that it should be much more open, and that's the kind of community that we are. But the libraries have to allow people
Mhm.
to speak and to meet. But the library has their own policy that they only allow, and there's a group, I think a Persian group meeting on the 5th, and they, because of breakdown and setup, they really only allow one. That's their own policy, one group to meet at a time. But no one has approached them on this. But just because it's not going to happen on August 5th doesn't mean it can't happen another time.
Exactly right, of course.
Thank you.
I think we need to be vigilant, and unfortunately I have to leave, but I thought this was a great conversation tonight.
Okay, bye. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Katie, did you want to go over that last bit that you emailed me about?
just 30 seconds. I'll email the group both of these items, but I wanted to flag the select board is meeting tomorrow night. One of their agenda items is to review a composition and charge for a Needham branding and town seal committee. This is a goal of the select board that you all had weighed in on, that you wanted them to keep. So this group will be looking at our current town seal, the quality of the graphic and the appropriateness of the design. And they are also going to be looking at creating a brand for the town. So a lot of communities have logos and they use their seal just for very official government documents, but on the DPW truck and on the side of our Big Belly trash cans, there's actually a lot of communities do logos and we don't have one. So this committee would be looking at this topic, making recommendations to the select board. Right now in the draft charge, there is a seat for the Human Rights Committee. We also added a seat for a representative Native Praying Indians. Thank you, Cynthia, for your context and guidance on that. So I will email this out. It's going to the select board tomorrow just for their first look. I anticipate they will vote to approve the creation, not the appointment of the people, but just the creation of the group on August 15th. So if anyone has comments, please feel free to send them to me between tomorrow and the 15th. The second is a future agenda item in the fall. If this group is interested, the select board created a code of conduct for themselves. And they have asked liaisons to push it out to all town boards and committees if each wants to so choose to take it up in terms of the code of conduct that members of town boards and committees hold themselves to. So I will send that all your way. Topic for a future meeting if you're interested in doing that, but it's voluntary. That's it.
Thank you. Any last minute stuff?
Thank you to Tina and Jen and Carrie for following up with the meeting with Dan and all the other work that Tina and probably others have been doing this is really important, and it's the kind of thing that makes those of us who've been part of the Human Rights Committee for a while feel like it's worth being able to serve the town in this way. So thank you. And Katie for her making things happen too.
Thank you. Anyone else? Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second,
Second,
okay. Amelia,
Yes.
feel better? Cynthia? Are you muted? Cynthia? Is she,
You're muted, Cynthia.
Yes, sorry.
thank you. Jen,
yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Marlene,
Yes.
I am a yes. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your summers to do this. We'll talk soon.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
All
Bye.
right, thank you.
Hi, everybody.